Having a career comeback is difficult for any celebrity to do. How do you get back in the public's good graces after being written off as a has-been? This was the problem Mariah Carey was facing in the early 2000s. Her feature film debut and its accompanying soundtrack, 2001's Glitter, were both panned as being the worst projects of her career. On top of this, Mariah suffered from an emotional breakdown earlier that year due to severe exhaustion from being overworked for over a decade straight. Given how this was the early 2000s, when mental health wasn't taken as seriously as it is now, Mariah got little to no sympathy from the media or the general public, who jumped at this opportunity to tear her down. Her next album, 2002's Charm Bracelet, was received more favorably by critics, though commercially it underperformed when compared to her previous albums. Things weren't looking too hot for Mariah, but after taking some time for herself, she returned to the studio in 2004 to create an album that would reassert her dominance as one of the greatest artists of all time. Mariah wanted to create a record about personal freedom, which is something she struggled to have during her career. Whether it was her controlling ex-husband, Tommy Mottola, her family, or her record label, Mariah had been stuck in a position of having to appease other people ever since her breakthrough in 1990. Her early records were specifically made to be mainstream accessible adult contemporary, which is a genre she absolutely bodies, but by the mid-90s, she wanted to incorporate more R&B and hip-hop elements into her music, much to the apprehension of her label. Her 1997 album, Butterfly, represented a shift towards the kind of music she wanted to make, and was her most personal up to that point, with songs discussing the trauma she experienced growing up as a mixed-race child, and her newfound post-divorce freedom. This new album, on the other hand, would take a different approach. Mariah was here to celebrate, while making the kinds of music that she loved. Taking influence from contemporary R&B, soul, dance, and hip-hop, Mariah crafted an album that was uniquely hers, one that wasn't meant to appease what her record label expected from her. The lead single, It's Like That, made her intentions clear from the very beginning. The opening line, I Came to Have a Party, sets the tone for what this era represented. A sparsely produced hip-hop and dance track, It's Like That is such a party anthem. This is the exact type of song you listen to right before you go out. It gets you hyped, it makes you feel like you're the baddest bitch in the room. The video really sells that fantasy too, with Mariah attending a party on the night before her wedding to the owner of the mansion that she's in, who looks eerily similar to Ms. Tammy Motorola. I love this video so much. You could tell it was cathartic for her, since it represents the freedom she wished she had during her marriage. Also, the entrance she makes is iconic. I imagine this is how she just walks into any room though. She probably picks up her kids from school like this. It's Like That was one of her biggest singles in years, but this was only the warm-up for what was coming next. In March 2005, Mariah dropped We Belong Together, and the world is still recovering from its impact. A soulful R&B ballad, We Belong Together is genuinely one of the greatest hit songs of all time. Not only does it play into her strengths as the queen of ballads, but it's also filled with individual moments that show off her personality more than she ever really had. We Belong Together is pure melodrama, delivered in a way only Mariah could. The lyrics convey her desperation to be with her true love, and Mariah's pleading vocal performance is simultaneously heartbreaking and hilariously overdramatic. My favorite part is in the second verse, when she says she has to turn the radio station to another channel because she can't bear to listen to Bobby Womack's If You Think You're Lonely Now. It's little touches like this that make the song both relatable to anyone who's ever missed their ex, but still specific to Mariah. The video is a continuation of It's Like That, with her actually attending the wedding to the faux Tommy Pickles Mottola. She's even wearing the same dress she married him in, which is such a Mariah move. Of course she'd whip out the dress from the archives just to shoot a video where she's a runaway bride with a hotter man. This is probably the fantasy she'd been playing out in her mind while they were married, and now she actually got to film it. We Belong Together was a smash to say the least, staying at number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100 for 14 weeks, and becoming not only the biggest hit of 2005, but one of the most successful singles of all time. Mariah was back, baby, there was no question. As someone who grew up in the 2000s, I can honestly say this was the song I remember hearing the most on the radio. When I think of 2005, I think of We Belong Together and Ashlee Simpson's Pieces of Me as the two songs you literally could not escape. To this day, I still think it's the song I've heard the most on the radio, only rivaled by Adele's Rolling in the Deep. The song was such a huge success that it actually blocked her next single, Shake It Off, from going to number 1. The girl was in competition with herself. It's too bad Shake It Off didn't go to number 1, cause it's a serious bop about her moving on from her cheating man. The lyrics are hilarious, and once again show off Mariah's personality. This is a playful kiss-off anthem, and the bouncy production complements that. The album itself, titled The Emancipation of Mimi, dropped in April 2005, and it swiftly became her biggest record in years, debuting at number 1 on the Billboard 200, with over 400,000 copies sold in its first week. It would go on to become the highest-selling album of 2005, and one of the most successful albums of all time. A whopping 7 singles were released, all of which represented the different sounds she tackled during this era. From the hip-hop and dance-infused Get Your Number, the laid-back R&B track Say Something with Snoop Dogg, and the soulful gospel track Fly Like a Bird, which is my personal favorite single from this era. This song gives me chills and makes me teary-eyed every time I hear it. It's about how the world can be messed up, but she still finds strength through her faith to keep her going. I'm not even a particularly religious person, but I gotta go to church whenever I listen to this. You really hear her soul in this song, as it was clearly inspired by the turmoil of her personal life and how she was able to push through it. The ending is especially incredible, with those classic Mariah whistle notes being mixed in with a gospel choir. It's so emotional and uplifting. In an interview, she described the song as being more hopeful than her previous ballads, like Petals and Close My Eyes, and that hopefulness is tangible when listening. The track opens with Mariah's pastor, Clarence Keaton, reading a Bible verse, which says, "Weeping may endure for a night, but joy cometh in the morning," and that really sums up the song so well. Fly Like a Bird is one of her most triumphant tracks, and it's very fitting for this moment in her career, since she was finally back on top after the media tried to declare she was over. And on a personal note, this is not only one of my favorite Mariah songs, but it's one of my favorite songs period. Few other songs inspire hope in me the way that this one does, and it's always one I listen to whether I need an uplifting pick-me-up, or for when I've accomplished something and I'm feeling myself. The singles from this album are all great, but truthfully any song from The Emancipation of Mimi would have been a smash. This is one of those records that from top to bottom is filled with hit after hit, from the adorable love song Your Girl, the sweeping big band track I Wish You Knew, and the funky To the Floor, which is another dance bop. The sheer amount of songs on here that are, in my opinion, among her best is crazy. One and Only and its sequel song So Lonely, both featuring Twista, are especially great, and some of her best deep cuts. The chorus to One and Only is so catchy, and her breathy vocal delivery on So Lonely makes it one of her sexiest songs. Stay the Night is another highlight, and was actually going to be the lead single at one point. This could have totally smashed. It manages to blend throwback and contemporary sounds together into something that sounds fresh to this day. Its bouncy piano-driven production and Mariah's soaring vocals make it sound so classic and timeless. It's another one of her best deep cuts in my opinion. Any one of these songs could be released now and still be a hit. They are that great. Hell, the song Circles was kinda re-released recently, albeit as a dance remix by DJ and producer Eli. This remix is fire, by the way. You should totally check it out if you love an emotional club track. Due to its mammoth success, The Emancipation of Mimi was reissued with 3 new tracks, one of which was her 17th number 1 single, Don't Forget About Us. This song is tragically underrated. I feel like no one talks about it anymore. It's a gorgeous ballad that sees her singing to her first love, and how she hopes he never forgets the good times they had together. It's a heartbreaker for sure, but it's also a great one to just throw on and chill out to. It definitely follows the blueprint established by We Belong Together, but I don't see anything wrong with that. Don't Forget About Us stands perfectly well on its own, and it's another one of my favorite Mariah songs. I could go on and on all day about how great this album is, but I think the music and its behemoth chart success speaks for itself. This is the comeback record, as it re-established Mariah's place in the music industry, while staying true to who she is as an artist. Not only is it a blend of her favorite genres, but the empowering and often humorous lyrics make the album one of her most lively and expressive. This was really the first time she fully embraced her perceived over-the-top diva persona, which is something she continued to do for her following records. This is where the glamorous public image of Mariah was fully reflected in the music, and that's why I think it worked so well. She was beaming with confidence during this era, and that self-assuredness led to her making one of the best albums of the decade. The Emancipation of Mimi is the quintessential Mariah album. It's the one I'd recommend new listeners get into first. It has everything she does best: tearjerker ballads, upbeat party tracks, and soulful R&B, all delivered in the most extra, dramatic, and charismatic way possible. This is how you do a comeback, darlings. When the world's tried to count her out, Mariah reminded everyone why she's the one and only Songbird Supreme.